Do you want to know the fastest way to double your business without signing a single new client? It's the most simple, obvious strategy that the majority of coaches overlook in favour of new. Recommit every single client you currently have for an additional 6 months. You might be thinking, no bother Jen, easier said than done. I know coaches who dread that recommit conversation because they're convinced that clients will use it as an opportunity to leave. And if you assume that your clients will leave as soon as they're given the chance, it's because you know that you're not giving them enough of a reason to stay. The result alone is not enough. They can get that anywhere. Why should they stay to achieve it with you? The journey and experience on the way to achieving the result will dictate its entire possibility. And as a coach, you cannot underestimate your responsibility in creating this. So in today's video, I'm going to give you the 5 key retention tools that helped us to create a 24+ months retention rate as standard in our Gen Pop coaching business built for life, and then how to apply these inside of your program to keep your clients for longer and keep more of the money that you make. So step 1. We need to understand what a coaching process is and what a coaching process isn't, okay? A coaching process is not a fat loss process that leads into a reverse diet and maintenance. It is not a progressive training plan. It is not a performance goal when somebody gets bored of training and needs something to energise them. And it is not a new goal every 3 months. These are parts of a coaching process, and these are sometimes relevant for clients. However, if you think that your coaching process exists entirely of these things that are just slight variations of macros in a training plan, they are not, right? If you want someone to trust the process, you have to give them a process to trust. And that means that they need to know what is coming next. If you feel like you constantly have clients in reactive mindsets where they get bored, they need something new, they stick to something for a wee while and it's not working and they want to try something else, you're trying to get them to commit to a never-ending fat loss process with no variation that could take months. People need to know what is going to happen next. And if you have a coaching process that tells them, here is exactly what happens at every single stage and every single thing that we focus on, it means that when they start to lose their shit a wee bit, or they need something to re-engage them, or they need something to focus them, you have that already in place. As a coach, the process is your responsibility. The behaviours that get the person to the outcome is the client's responsibility. That's how you meet yourselves 50-50, okay? What the coaching process actually is a phased approach to building behaviour tolerance and change simultaneously. We need to help people recognise that in order to be able to change a behaviour, we have to be able to tolerate a behaviour. And if they're not able to tolerate a certain behaviour for a certain amount of time, it will never change. So behaviour tolerance looks like increasing amounts of the behaviour gradually over time, phased in a way that allows them to change it long term. If we go from behaving one way one day to behaving another way the next day, it's never sustainable, okay? Behaviour change has to happen in a phased, increasing approach, in a progressive way. The same way that if you were designing a training plan for somebody, you would create it in a progressive, phased way. Behaviour change works in the exact same way, right? If they wanted to be able to squat 100 kilos, you wouldn't have them squat nothing one day and 100 kilos the next day, right? Behaviour change works the exact same way. It is a phased, increasing approach, okay? It is adherence strategies that balance physical outcomes with psychological development. We have to recognise that a person's ability to achieve a physical outcome is almost entirely dictated around the psychological development that allows that physical outcome to be sustained and achieved, right? This doesn't just mean doing all the mindset work, because somebody can be feeling great but still not making any sort of physical change. It has to be both, right? It is both that transformational on the bottom and transactional on the top, and how we balance both of those things consistently. I have another video on this channel a way back near the start, I think it's maybe video 2 or 3, so go and have a watch of that, and that'll tell you more about how you balance the physical and psychological through the journey of change. It looks like structured experimentation that allows failure and progress to coexist, right? Because we have to help our clients understand that failure and progress have to work together in order to be able to reach the outcome. And structured experimentation looks like like I said before, phased and increasing experimentation with change instead of, fuck it, stop doing this one day and go and do that the next day, right? Because if we don't help people have a structure and they're just constantly trying and failing, they're going to lose momentum, they're going to lose interest, okay? Structured experimentation allows for small pockets of failure and small pockets of progress to happen at the same time. And the whole process is facilitating neuroplasticity to create habits and rewire the brain. This basically means that we're helping people to change their brain in a way that allows the change to become long-term. Long-term change doesn't just look like being able to do the same thing for long enough that the change happens. Some people can perform a behaviour for a long time without actually changing it, okay? And for many of your clients who've had previous successful attempts at fat loss, but it's never worked or they've never been able to sustain it, it's because they were temporarily performing the behaviour. They didn't actually change their behaviour. So that's why we have to get the balance between physical and psychological, and that's why a coaching process is super important, okay? So number one, in step one of the coaching process as a whole, and where it all kicks off, is the coaching contract, right? This is an agreement between the coach and the client on their 50-50 split contribution to the coaching outcome, right? This is not terms and conditions on payment and a notice period. This is an agreement between coach and client on how they will work together throughout the process of change, right? And this covers everything to communication, what you'll do when things get hard, how you'll engage with them if they start ghosting you, what you need from them and what they need from you. This is not you creating this. I remember people went through a phase of doing this on social media. It gives me the ick, right? Which is, this program is for people who are willing to do the hard work and get after it and not complain, right? People who are basically advertising spots for coaching to people who don't need coaching, right? Insane. This is not you creating a pro forma of the perfect client and expecting them to fit it. This is you agreeing together what will work for you, what works for them, and meeting somewhere in the middle. We have to be realistic from both perspectives. They have to be realistic that there are elements of this that are going to be difficult, that they're going to find hard, and that won't immediately suit them down to the ground, and vice versa. There are going to be parts of it that in their behaviour, in ways that they want to communicate, in ways that they engage, that you're going to find difficult, right? We have to accept that for both of you, there is difficulty here, okay? But once we can get specific and realistic about what will we do if this happens? How will we communicate? How will we work together? How do you like to be coached, right? How do I like to coach? And how are we able to bring those together to create a relationship that helps us to get this outcome, right? This is co-created and revisited throughout the relationship. Recontracting is as important as contracting, okay? So whenever the outcome might change, whenever the client wants to try and work towards something new, whenever their conditions and circumstances change, they might get a part of the way through and think, actually, I don't want this, or I want more of this. I only wanted to lose 2 stone, but now I'm realising I need to lose 4. I'm no longer interested in fat loss. I want to bring more of a focus to performance. That requires recontracting. Also, when you've known your clients for a long time, you can start to slip more into friends than coach and client, which is fine. Friendships that are born as a result of a great coaching relationship are not a bad thing at all. However, when we're still coaching people, we need to be able to have a distinction between when we're friends and when we're coaching client. So as long as you can hold that distinction with somebody, it's absolutely fine. But sometimes that requires contracting to say, okay, when we're focusing on X, Y, and Z, we are coaching client. And we need to be able to still hold that boundary in the relationship if the person is still working towards an outcome. Sometimes that requires recontracting as well. Then we have the 2 anchors, which are values and vision. Values are why we do what we do. Vision is why it's important, okay? So values are all about, why does this matter to me? This matters to me because I value my health. This matters to me because I value my family. This matters to me because I value growth, right? Vision then is, well, why is any of that important? It's important because I want to be around for my kids for a long time. It's important because I want to look back on my life and see that I've left a legacy. It's important to me because I want to break generational cycles of obesity and poor health and be the first in my family to not go into later life with obesity and osteoporosis and health conditions, right? We have to be able to provide those anchors either side, because without the why does this matter to me and why is this important, those have to anchor every single decision that the person makes. Otherwise, they start to make decisions from a place of ego, from a place of fear, from a place of distraction, from a place of avoiding the real work, okay? Everything that they decide to do has to sit inside of those two anchors for it to be protected. If it doesn't check out against what they value and the vision that they have for their life, then we shouldn't be doing it at all, okay? Then we have the competency framework. Now, I talk about the competency framework a lot. In Built for Coaches, we actually help our clients to build their own competency framework for their clients, because this tells your clients exactly how to behave and how to progress with those behaviours. Because what happens quite a lot in coaching, right? There's often a lot of guesswork for the client the coach doesn't even realise. When you have an expertise in something, and when you have done something for a really long time, sometimes you can overlook or forget the detail, right? So things that you see as standard, you can sometimes take for granted as a coach and not recognise that your clients don't realise that these are standards and that these are basics, right? And instead of that frustration of trying to get them to do the basics, I always say to coaches, make it explicit, make it clear, make it specific, exactly what this basic looks like at level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. That's how we move people through that progressive behaviour change, instead of you need to stop everything you're doing now and start doing everything next. And it also gives a really nice waypoint for those people who really don't want to take it slow. They're maybe resistant to a slower pace, right? What this does is it helps them to recognise this is stage 1 and this is success at stage 1. It specifies it. Instead of them feeling like they have set their goal at 10 and they need to get to 10 as quickly as possible and anything less is failure, we're specifying what success looks like for where they are right now, instead of framing it as just a lesser portion of the thing that they're trying to achieve. Because if it's framed as a lesser portion of the thing that they're trying to achieve, that's not going to reinforce them to feel successful. Whereas if it's set for the standard as completing the first phase, that's a whole different psychological approach that helps to reinforce a sense of success, okay? So, competency framework tells your clients exactly the kinds of behaviours that we need to see physically and psychologically at every stage of the change process in order for them to be at the end goal and the end result, right? Like I said, nothing in coaching should be assumed. Everything should be clear and specific. And I always say to coaches, especially for stage 1, put the bar in hell. Make it so easy to achieve and make it so accessible that the client feels so successful and so competent. They're ready to hit the ground running. They keep flying forward because they think, I've really got this nailed, right? This gives your clients a roadmap based on real, measurable and progressive behaviours. And I always say, please base your competency framework on the people that you already work with and not this idealistic client that doesn't exist. Do not base it on what would be a great standard for your clients to uphold. Base it on a realistic standard that your current clients are able to uphold. Because the more this can be an example of the real people that you actually work with, 1, the more achievable it is for people you continue to work with, but 2, you've got evidence that it works. So whenever people are going through those natural challenges of change, you can say to them, look, when such and such was at phase 2, this is exactly what they experienced. This is exactly what we did, and this is exactly what moved them forward. That's all quantified, trialled and tested data and information that helps that person to be able to move forward instead of them feeling like they are the problem and that they are alone in it, okay? Then we have the milestone planner. So this is the thing that brings progress to life. The biggest mistake that I see coaches make and that I see people make on any sort of coaching journey is to create a time-focused goal. I want to lose 4 stone in the next 6 months. I want to be at X weight by X date. I want to be in this dress size for this occasion. Whenever you put a time-bound goal, and whoever told coaches about SMART goals, I really want to punch them in the face, because a huge part of SMART goals is being time-bound. SMART goals work really well in organisations, right, where you do need to have time-bound outcomes, but when we're working with human beings and they are responsible for the creation of that change, I always just think that timelines are totally arbitrary. A lot of coaches disagree with me on that. They think that timeframes lock people in. I actually find with the majority of people it has the opposite effect. It adds a level of pressure that is not helpful. And actually, if they do manage to get to that goal by that date, as soon as that goal and date pass, they're like a fart in a trance. They don't know what to do because the goal has passed, the timeline has passed, they're beyond that end date. They don't know what to do themselves after that. I actually think that measuring progress on behavioural milestones as opposed to time-bound constraints is much more effective, because instead of I should have been here by this date, says who, you're actually focusing on how much progress am I making towards the next milestone, and when will I review my progress towards the next milestone, as opposed to I need to be here by this date. I've just yet to meet anybody, especially in health and fitness coaching, that this is useful for. I think unless you're working with a very specific type of client who's already very skilled and seasoned, so we're talking like bodybuilders prepping for a show, people prepping for a photo shoot, people prepping for a performance goal, yes, those have a time limit, so that's very different, and often those people have already demonstrated the necessary skill with the basics to be able to get there. When you're working with Gen Pop, I would really actively discourage time-bound goals. We then have the gears model. So the gears model is all about the pace at which we go through the milestones. So the competency framework tells us the behaviours. Those behaviours then populate the milestone planner, right? So based on where a person currently is, I'm going to go back and talk about the milestone planner more actually, because I just realised that I didn't actually tell you what the milestone planner is. What the milestone planner is we set 10 and we set and forget, okay? So 10 is the end result. It's how they look, how they feel, what they have that they don't have right now. 0 is rock bottom. They've got none of those things, right? They have absolutely nothing, worst place they've ever been. Then you look at where are they right now. They might say they're at 5. So what we do with the milestone planner is we look at what's going to take us from 5 to 6. That's then how your competency framework translates across to this, because we say, right, okay, I'm at stage 2 and I'm at 5 in my milestone planner. In order for me to get to 6, here are the necessary things that I need to be able to do on a regular basis to get there. And those are outlined in the competency framework. So the person doesn't have to come up with it or make it up on the spot. They know phase 2 of this process looks like A, B and C. Therefore, those are the behaviours that will help me hit my next milestone. And my next milestone is, and here are the behaviours that are going to get me there. And here's when I will review it with my coach, right? Then you move to 7, then you move to 8, then you move to 9, then you move to 10. It stops clients being obsessed with the end goal, because we set and forget. We're not talking about the end goal. We're just talking about the next milestone, and that's the only place we coach towards, and that's the only place we focus on, okay? So then the gears model comes in, because that dictates the pace at which we do this. Now, like I said before, for a lot of clients, telling them they need to go slower, right, is going to immediately disengage them. They're not going to want to go slower. However, when we can dictate all paces and the client can self-select a pace, it removes the shame and guilt of slower, but it also specifies what speed we are going at, right? Just like 5th gear, hurtling down the motorway, not a thing in your way, that's not somewhere that's sustainable. Eventually we have to slow down, right? Eventually things get in the way and means we need to go at a crawl. But what the gears model does is it helps to keep momentum, right? So we know objects in motion tend to stay in motion. If you have a client who's start, stop, on, off, on the wagon, off the wagon, on plan, off plan, it's because they're struggling to maintain momentum, because they have a belief around the level of momentum necessary to see change. Whereas if you can encourage them that instead of stopping or starting, they can just reduce the momentum, that's going to help them to continue to stay in motion, and psychologically they are still making progress towards their goal. They have not stopped, they've simply slowed the pace. The beauty of the gears model is that the client self-selects, so they decide what 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5th gear look like from all physical and psychological aspects based on their availability, based on their standards and what they can do. One client's first gear and another client's first gear are going to look very, very different, but it also means they can give themselves permission around the pace that they're going to take, and they can communicate that with you to say, this week I'm in gear 3, this week I'm in gear 1 because I've got X, Y and Z going on, this week I'm in gear 5 because I've got tons of energy, I've got tons of time, and I really want to get after it. And it also helps people to understand that consistency is not doing the same thing every day or the same thing every week. Consistency looks like different amounts of energy availability on different days, because that's how humans behave, okay? So it completely normalises changes in variation and pace and helps people to translate consistency into a context that makes sense for them. So I hope that this was useful. I hope that those steps gave you some insight into how you can apply this with your clients and how you can start to create a wee bit more structure that supports people to move through a process, because I really believe that if you do want to retain people for a long period of time, there has to be something coming next that's not just the same as all the stuff that they've done before. And I think when you're trying to recommit people, the reason that a lot of coaches dread this is because they've got nothing to promise the client other than more of the same. And if the client believes that they've either nailed it and they can do it all on their own, or that they don't want to do more of the same because it's not working, it leaves you and the client with very little flexibility and anywhere else to go. Whereas building an entire process that can tell the client, this is everything that's still to come, this is where we focus next, let's get you there, it helps give people a reason to stay. So I really hope this has been useful. I hope there's some things here that you can implement inside of your coaching business. If there's anything that I can help with, then please leave a comment below. Please like, subscribe, share with someone who would find this useful. Or you can shoot me a DM on Instagram. I'm at coach.with.jen, and I'm more than happy to help with anything that I possibly can to make you and your clients' coaching journeys easier, happier and more successful. I'll see you in the next one.